Hey, welcome everybody to Hope for Our Times. And you are in for a fabulous time if you like to laugh and have a great time and be engaged and learn and be challenged. You're about ready to. My guest today is Kyle Mann from Babylon Bee. And I know many of you already follow Babylon Bee. And so we're going to have a great time. Kyle, great having you here.
Well, it's great to be here. It's fantastic.
This is so cool. So I have so many questions to ask you. I'm ready to just dive right into it. If there's anything you want to say to everybody before you get going, I believe that's your camera there.
Okay, this is where I can do all my pitches and
you
sell you guys all my products
pitches?
and all my essential oils, work for home business. This is my chance.
Hey,
Now let's just dive into it, man.
Whatever it takes. All right, so let's just start off with the obvious. You do an incredible job of using satire and humor. I repost your things all the time. My friends are all sharing them. We'll get into some of that a little bit, but first of all,
do you click and read the articles though, or do you just share the headline?
It depends. Oh, with my friends, I just share the headlines.
Yeah.
But with I read the articles, and I actually do, believe it or not.
Okay. And I trust you.
Yeah, no, because I need material. I mean, ask everybody who watches me. I need a lot of material. So, and I also like humor material because it's a lot more fun. But with that, you also have not the Babylon.
Yeah.
Not the Bee.
And not the Bee.
Not the Bee, which is great. Okay, so we're going to get into that, and I just absolutely love what you do, and there's people that are tricked by not the Bee. It's kind of similar to what I have a program here called You Can't Make This Up. I take real things and just go, yeah, it's like, you can't make this stuff up.
Right.
This stuff's just nuts. People are crazy. All right, with that, how did you come up with the name Babylon Bee?
Yeah.
And I would even say, what inspired you?
Yeah, Babylon Bee was launched 9 years ago, and we kind of were thinking of it like dispatches from Babylon. It's like this idea that wherever you live as a Christian, whatever nation, no matter how aligned it is with Christian values to some extent, you are in Babylon. Our true home is in heaven with the Lord, and it's not here. So this idea of having this satirical news organization that kind of comments on all the wacky stuff that happens in Babylon was the idea. And then the Bee is a nice Sacramento Bee, whatever name. It has a nice ring to it. It's got a stinger. Satire should sting a little bit, so that's why we like the Bee.
It's great. So how do you balance when we look at our culture? Everybody's so sensitive. Everybody gets offended so easy. And I mean, I look at that. How do you look for a balance there? You just go for it and let the chips fall where they may.
It's a little both. That's my job as the editor-in-chief, is to make sure that everything we're doing is on target, and you're laser focusing in on something that you're criticizing or you're making fun of. And satire has a whole range, a whole spectrum from being a little more soft and just being loving, gentle satire of the church, making fun of worship leaders wearing goofy outfits and that kind of stuff, all the way to stuff that's a lot more stinging, or you make fun of, the prosperity gospel guys and stuff like that. So it kind of depends on the topic that we're covering, like how sensitive you need to be to it.
Yeah, you make fun of worship leaders and pastors wearing skinny jeans.
Exactly. Which I don't know.
No, I don't.
Those
I can't fit in skinny jeans.
They don't qualify as skinny jeans.
No, I would not look good either. And you just ruined my brain. So everything was fine till then. So you have I believe it's a book. It is your book, and I haven't read it yet. I wish I had it here right now, but
it counts for daily devotionals if that matters to you. I mean,
Hey, can we get him one of our devotional books too? Hey, Craig, we should do it. You Can't Make This Up daily devotional. So, the Babylon Bee Guide to the Apocalypse. Now, this is like gold to me because I teach on prophecy all the time. I've been speaking on prophecy for years, probably 30 years, and there's some crazy stuff out there that people say is based on the Bible. It's not. And it goes all over the map. But I'm just really curious. I think you were in an interview with Elisa Childers, and you guys discussed that. But with that, with the Babylon Bee Guide to the Apocalypse, I know with my viewers, that would definitely get their ears up. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so we have a whole Babylon Bee Guide series. We have the Babylon Bee Guide to Wokeness. We have the Babylon Bee Guide to Gender, and the Babylon Bee Guide to Democracy, and now the Babylon Bee Guide to the Apocalypse. So the idea was we do these instructional how-to guides, lots of fun stick figures and comic type illustrations that we had our graphics team work at. And the Guide to the Apocalypse, the idea there was like, as satirists that cover the news, we're constantly seeing these news stories that pop up, and everybody thinks like, oh, the world is ending. The Democrats are doing this, or the world is ending. Republicans are doing this. Whichever side gets into the office, the other side thinks the world is ending. No matter what happens. And then, but because we cover the news 24/7, I see these news stories come and go so quickly. I look back at a B article I wrote 3 months ago, and I'm like, I don't even remember what everybody was talking about, like what everybody was freaking out about, with this little news story or whatever. So we kind of played on that for the Babylon Bee Guide to the Apocalypse, and we hit on all the different angles of things that people think is going to end the world, like climate change, and the great MAGA takeover is going to, destroy everything. Trump is going to explode the world with nukes or something, like whatever political side you're on, we kind of make fun of that. We have a rapture chapter, so we talk about the rapture and how Kirk Cameron can come in and save you in your bunker and all this wonderful stuff. So some lighthearted, theological humor there too. But I think it's important as Christians to remember that God's in control of history. He's on the throne, so we don't have to freak out about all that stuff. You see, I've got Democrat friends that just post stuff on Facebook all day long about how the world's ending, and you're like, no, like, yes, the world will end one day, but not because of Trump or Elon Musk cutting government spending 1% or something, or whatever.
exposing where our tax dollars are going.
Right, like, that's the end of the world.
Yeah, and there's nothing. You see these things government funded. No, there's no such thing as government funded. Taxpayer funded.
You funded.
You funded it. It is so funny because if I go back to the previous regime, Biden-Harris regime, I cannot imagine this world with Harris and in a tampon Tim. I was just thinking, oh, that'd be so crazy. But I posted a lot back then. The world's coming to an end. You better get your act together.
Yeah, it's a check on us. It's a gut check on us too, because we look at the other side come in, and you're like, you got to remember, God's in control of this stuff, and we're in this little small part of history. Whether Jesus is coming back tomorrow or he's coming back in 1,000 years, God's in control of that, and we don't have to worry about it.
Amen. In fact, I constantly remind people all the time, look, because now I'm dealing with the other side that is saying Trump and Musk are going to end everything. You have the Antichrist and false prophet, and all these things going on. Okay, but with that, I try to remind people all the time, Jesus himself said, he said, it's going to happen at a time when you least expect it. And I could reference several other passages, it's people are so on the edge right now, but we don't know what the day or the hour is going to be. We don't know when that is going to, we have some ideas from looking at scripture, but we can't figure out exactly how things are going to go. We know certain things with Israel. We can put that into a particular category. But I remember in 1988, I thought for sure I was getting raptured in 1988. How many years ago was that, Peter? That was 40, like almost 40, wasn't it? 1988, 37 years ago.
What was the year of that book? It was like the 88.
88 Reasons Why Jesus is coming
back in 88.
1988. And then it didn't work out. So in 89, he came out with 89 Reasons Why Jesus is coming back in 89. Thinking, did you know that, Peter? Yeah, these crazy things. So it's it's things like that make me focus on really sticking with the Bible. What does the Bible really say about these things? Okay, you also, I find this really fascinating, and I think our viewers will too. You graduated from the Masters.
Yeah, Masters University. Yeah. So I went to the Masters University for 2 years and studied Bible and missions, and it was a blast. It was fun being in that environment. I think that's a lot of where your sense of humor kind of gets built up. Like, I was in a dorm that had 5 guys, and it was like just this like packed little 2-bedroom apartment thing with 5 dudes. And it's like, you're just goofing around all day. And we all grew up in Christian homes or homeschooled homes. So you all had those similar experiences. And it's like meeting C.S. Lewis says, you meet someone else and that's where friendship starts. Is like, you too, I thought I was the only one, and that was growing up with people that also only could watch VeggieTales and all this other, stuff. So like that
broccoli,
kind of, so that kind of like inside baseball Christian humor was like born there to some extent, I think.
Yeah. So you were a MacArthurite.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I go back over the years. I remember going to the Shepherds conferences many years ago, and all of that. And so you were in that, going to school, did 2 years there, and then you became a pastor in San Diego.
Yeah, a long time later, I took a circuitous route through my life. I ended up I got married real young, as I was 20, and then I became a truck driver. So I was a truck driver for a couple of years, and then was promoted to a assistant manager warehouse position. Eventually was a regional sales manager for a Southern California construction sales company. So I did that for like a decade. And in the middle there somewhere, I started, I was always helping out at church and volunteering. And so at some point, I ended up getting ordained as a pastor in Southern Baptist Convention, and I helped co-pastor a church for several years.
So you're Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
I've never met any.
Well,
no, not true.
Now you have.
No, that's not true. Met many.
Well, you probably have, but they all say they're non-denominational, which
they do. They all do. It's like, so I was a Calvary Chapel person, right? It's not an official denomination,
the non-denominational,
but it really is. And now it's a denomination that's been split. But yeah, the non-denominational denomination. What brought you? So how long were you a pastor for again?
I was there for about 4 years. And and then in the midst of that, the Babylon Bee launched. So for a few years there, I was doing the day job thing, the pastoring thing, and the Babylon Bee.
Yeah. So you decided to leave that aspect of ministry
to focus on the Bee full time. Yeah.
So what would you do? You look at Babylon Bee as being a ministry?
It's funny, not really, because I look at people that
I can hear them laughing.
They're laughing. Yeah, right. It's not a ministry. But like we get people, a lot of old people, they'll send you a letter that's like, thank you, handwritten letter. We still get those, like, thank you so much for your ministry. It's a weird thing. Like, you're like, well, we write jokes on the internet, so I don't know how much of a ministry that. But there's truth to the fact that like God gave us humor. People need to laugh, and I think it's a comfort. It's a reminder of who's in control and the fact that we don't have to be panicking like the world panics. And so to some extent, like. But just in the sense that any vocation can be a ministry, I think.
Well, it can, in that regard. In fact, we're called to be ambassadors for Christ and salt and light. So, indeed, I find the Babylon Bee very ministering in this sense. I love humor. I deal with insane things all day long. I'm scouring the news. I have people that send me things. I talk about them every day, and I put everything into a biblical perspective. But quite frankly, I've got to have humor. So I thoroughly enjoy humor. So I really enjoy the Babylon Bee and what you do there. Because in the stresses, even as a Christian theoretically should have the right perspective. Biblically, God's in control. You don't have to worry about this. We have enough worries today. Don't be worried about tomorrow, but you wake up, you see the news, and all the different dynamics of things that are changing so fast. And people are totally stressed. Anxiety levels are super high. I find it extremely refreshing to have humor. And you need to have humor because it gets you a perspective that you need.
Yeah, it softens the blow of the news a little bit. Like I know people that only consume the news through the Babylon Bee, which is funny, but in some sense you can kind of reverse engineer like what the news is by looking at the commentary on the Bee, and it's like, oh yeah, something must have happened here, but there's a sense where there's this concept called doom scrolling that people do where they're on X or Facebook and it's like, oh, another bad news story, another bad news, oh, this is terrible. They just sit there and scroll all day. And so like maybe the ministry aspect of the Babylon Bee is that you go through and it's like, wow, what's it? Oh, it's Babylon. And then there's like this moment of glancing at it again and being like, oh, okay. And being able to like laugh at it in that way, I think is super helpful. Humor also gives us a sense of humility and perspective. I think being able to laugh at yourself, I think is super important. The Babylon Bee started making fun of just lighthearted mega church humor. And because it's important to start there. It's important to start with a sense of humor about yourself, before you go make fun of the other side or the other guy. Like, be able to laugh at yourself. And I think, anybody who's like a dad and dad jokes, like we're always making fun of ourselves, and our kids are always making fun of us, and like it's an important thing to have that sense of humility.
I will admit, last night Actually, it's early this morning. I was going through dad jokes.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, they're really stupid, but they're really funny. They have this sense of humor. It's just kind of different.
Yeah.
And typical dad like. When I do doom scrolling.
Yeah.
Every day, because I have to.
I can tell. I can just by looking at you. You know?
By looking at my so I'm searching to see this because I know people out there, they're going to see these things and they need to understand, okay, what does this say? So I've got to look at it and go, okay, I'm going to bring the perspective of the Bible instead of allowing the news to interpret the Bible, because a lot of people do that in the prophecy world.
Yeah.
They'll allow the news to interpret what the Bible says. No, let's get the Bible to interpret the world that we live in so you can keep the right perspective, because people are going to come across it. So it is a lot of work to do that. And then whenever I can, I'll bring in the humor side to it. But it's so necessary. So let's go to something else. You have a movie regarding January 6th.
Yes. Yep.
And so how did that work out?
It was a blast. We shot this movie last year. We released it last year, January 6th, The Most Deadliest Day. And I play the role of a liberal journalist who's just an idiot, you know, is kind of a dork, but also like takes himself very seriously, that this was the worst day in all of human history. And so we actually went and interviewed real experts on these things, and kind of only halfway clued them into what we were doing. So a lot of them were just giving very dry answers, like, "What are you talking about? It's nobody died," you know, like those kind of answers. And then we went to the Capitol, we went to DC, got a lot of shots there. We did a lot of man on the street stuff. It was a blast, and it was really cool to see. We got to expose or share the stories of different people that, like Siaka Massaquoi is one of our actors. It's been in some of our sketches and stuff. And he had charges on him for January 6th, and he willingly released the selfie video of him on that day, and he's literally trying to help the police officers. He's trying to control the crowd. He's like, "Hey, everybody, calm down," you know, and being respectful. And they say, "Hey, can you leave?" And he's like, "Oh, absolutely, no problem," you know. And they charged him with multiple misdemeanors, felonies, raided his house, separated him from his pregnant wife on a tarmac, and years and years after the event, which was crazy. And he's just the nicest guy you'll ever meet, you know. So to see the way that the media portrayed these people versus how they actually were, which some of them got carried away, and were just normal people that nobody had any plan to insurrect anything that day. And it was very eye-opening, especially even for me, to interview these people and talk to people and just see, oh, this is the nicest person I've ever met, and the media is portraying them as this huge, insane villain thing. So it was really cool to release that, and then several months later, for all these people to get pardoned, the very people that we had talked to get pardoned through the Trump pardons when we got into office, which was very cool.
There's a gentleman, Derek. I'm trying to think of what his last name is. He was one of the January 6th prisoners. Mm-hmm. Doesn't live too far from here.
Yeah.
And I met him just a few weeks ago. But it was really, meeting him, and he said it was, bottom line, it was his faith in Christ.
Wow.
And he told the judge, he told the prosecuting attorneys, he said, "You can do to me whatever you want, but I am a prisoner for Christ." And it was having that perspective and knowing that he was in jail for however long time. And fortunately, he was one of them that was also let out on that day. Yeah, when you did this, what were the risks involved? Because obviously the former regime was still in charge at the time.
We didn't know, we had never done a feature length film like that. So to tackle a topic that was as divisive and just such a hot potato as January 6th was kind of a strange choice for our first film. But being willing to go there was super cool and inspiring. That people got to see this, and then being able to use humor, I think, was a key element there. Being able to use humor to expose this stuff. Like we were filming the goofiest scenes. Like we recreated the whole Capitol insurrection using Legos, on this stage. And so you watch this thing, and we're pushing them with the little military sticks. We're pushing the Lego, showing all the different battle formation. And so being able to do that is one of the things that's powerful about humor. Is people are like, oh, if you thought January 6th was the worst day ever, and you watch this movie, and we're just ripping that to shreds, and we're treating it so light in such a lighthearted way. you know, it might change perspectives, which is really cool that humor has the power to do that. So, but yeah, we didn't really have too many risks. We went out in the wild and talked to different people and did different things. The Capitol Police were cool, and they let us go up on the steps and let us do all that stuff. So that was really neat. But yeah, you know, anything like that, you're always risking censorship, getting blocked on social media. You know, people won't carry the DVD, or you know, stores won't sell it and stuff like that, which is always just something that comes with the territory. But it's been cool to see that the tide has been turning a little bit on that stuff too, with Zuckerberg coming out and saying, you know, well, sorry, I censored you guys for all these years, you know, and Musk taking over Twitter and all that stuff.
Have you interviewed Zuckerberg?
We have not. You know, I think that maybe that's the next step here, right? Like, because we got Elon Musk a couple times, and Zuckerberg seems like he's based now. You know, maybe he'll come on the V show.
I think it would be great.
Yeah.
How about Rogan?
My CEO has gone on Rogan a couple of times, but we haven't interviewed him ourselves.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be cool to see. Derek Kinnison was the general. Yeah, and it was just great meeting him. And Derek, if you're watching, God bless you. Thank you, and I know for you and everybody else, man, what a trial. But praise God. So for where we are now. Okay, you spoke of Legos. So one of the guys that was in January 6th prison was because he had a Lego still in the box. Didn't even open it up yet, still in the box. He was charged.
The FBI put it in, you know, in their evidence baggie or whatever, like on the file, had a Lego Capitol set, and they confiscated his Lego Capitol set when they raided his house or whatever.
So he planned the whole thing because he had a Lego set still in the box. Didn't even build it yet. Right. As we just look at things, you have a Christian worldview. When you look at something like the pro-life movement? With me, I think abortion is a sin. I think you can be forgiven of all sins. You can be forgiven of. God shows His grace and His mercy. I know many women that have had an abortion, and then they've come to faith in Christ. And one of my friends, he says, one of my pastor friends, he said, hey, when he talks about abortion, and he said he was challenged on that subject by somebody who came to his church. You know, you need to stop talking about this because women feel guilty when you start talking about it. And he just said, quite frankly, he goes, you know what? He said, they feel guilty already. They don't talk about how are they going to find grace? How are they going to find mercy and forgiveness? People already feel guilty over their sin. But I'm curious your thoughts on life and pro-life.
Yeah. The Babylon Bee, we've been staunchly pro-life since we launched, and that's been one of the cool things, is being able to do, you know, I say jokes. Jokes is probably the wrong word, but being able to write satire that just exposes the abortion movement for how evil it is. You know, we were making fun of Planned Parenthood right from the beginning, and that was one of the things that distinguished it. Like, you know, you had The Onion, which was kind of the you know, secular version of the Babylon Bee.
The left version of the Babylon Bee.
You know, and that it's been the satire paper of record for years. But the fact that they're not willing to touch something like that they're not willing to make fun of the fact that like millions of babies are dying every year, you know, or not make fun of that, but do jokes that expose that evil. You know, they always have to do jokes that defend that, and it's so weird because satire. Humor is funny insofar as it's true, insofar as it's aligns with reality, you know. And when you're not willing to go certain places because your politics say, "Oh no, we can't touch that. We can't make fun of that." It weakens the humor, you know. And it's like obvious, like you're not making fun of this thing that should be made fun of and should be exposed. So it's been cool to see the power of humor to be able to do that kind of thing.
Well, I did notice Babylon Bee recently, some posts that you had. It was able to make fun of the right, which is great to see. You have to be able to be balanced in that and look at the absurdity, both sides. I think there was a post I just saw. It was something about it's only wrong if the Democrats are doing it or something like that, and we need to be able to look at it with the reality of it. When going back to the Legos. Legos were challenged by the LGBT community recently because their male and female parts. I don't know if you saw that. It's just the insanity of this stuff.
The funny part about that is we made that joke years ago. We said like,
oh, you did?
We said like Lego introduces genderless bricks with no connectors, and they're just like they don't so stick together.
You're a prophet.
It's prophecy fulfilled, is it?
Oh, that's funny. That is great. You have. I'm curious on this because you were recently on with Kirk Cameron, or a while back you were on with Kirk Cameron, talking about the woke movement.
Yeah.
So, what are the dangers you see with the woke movement and where it's gone? We obviously have DI. I mean, we can look at DI and say, okay, you got Boeing issues. I mean, you have, but you look at schools and all the different dynamics there. But walk us through the woke movement.
Yeah, wokeness is interesting. It's a little bit of a moving target. It's like, what is wokeness? It can be a variety of things. It manifests in different ways. But like ultimately, wokeness is built on a Marxist worldview that just it's built on not having enough and wanting more. Like it's built on this idea of greed and grievance of like I can never be made whole because somebody has more than me, And so it's directly opposed to the Christian idea of gratitude and being willing to accept whatever fate throws at you, whatever God throws at you, and be content in all circumstances. Because you can't be content within wokeness. You build these, they have all these charts that show like here's where I fall on the intersectionality chart, and here's all the people who have wronged me in life, and you keep track of all these. You keep a record of wrongs, literally. It's like of like here's what white people have done to me, here's what rich people have done to me, here's and so you can never be happy because all you're doing is focusing on everything you don't have, And I mean, liberals sometimes identify like correct problems, like they'll identify like maybe it's not right that some people are poor and some people are in poverty, and that's terrible. Like, what can we do to fix that? Like, there's a legitimate thing that they identify, but then they identify and prescribe all the wrong solutions for that thing. That now we need equity. Now we need to take from somebody else and commit another harm in order to make these things right. So there's just a lot of like historical ignorance when it comes to that whole movement. But it's a lot of and obviously it manifests in all these different ways, whether that's gender or woke theology and woke politics, racism, like all these things that once your mind has been baptized in wokeism, it's like you see everything differently, right? It's like a born again thing. Right. You see everything differently. Now everything is seen through the lens of grievance, which is terrible for your mental state.
Grievance and victimhood. It's a difference. There's a difference between being awake and being woke.
Yeah.
They're like totally the opposite. When you mentioned Marxism, when you look at the Marxist playbook and you look what's happening with the woke culture, tearing down statues, removing all things from history that are factual, you cut all of that out so you don't have this foundation to look back on. But an entire generation has been radically brainwashed, I would even say, confused and brainwashed. To me, it looks like when I look at it from a biblical perspective and spiritual, where this is going is totally intentional to confuse the masses so that there's a generation that's alive right now that can't tell right from wrong.
Yeah, and it's part of a general political playbook too, that like both sides do this to some degree, that you always need a villain, like you always need someone that is the punching bag and the villain so you can rile up your base. And that's what they've done on the left. Is like, like right now I'm looking at everything that's happening in Washington. I'm like, okay, so we're cutting spending. We're, finally like someone's addressing this big issue that we don't have this money to pay for these things. But for them, it's like, they found their new punching bag. There's a tech billionaire. A tech billionaire is running the country, and so they found their villain. Like that's their guy that's oppressing them, and now they can harness all this hatred to try to, score political points and win elections and all that kind of stuff. So it's always trying to find that villain who's like ruining your life or whatever.
Yeah, no kidding. I was told a while back, if you ever want to make movies, you always have to have a good guy and you got to have a villain.
Yeah, right.
Doesn't matter. And even in podcasts, they said, well, I don't really have a lot of villains on my podcast that I know of. With Doge, as we look at it and everything is being exposed, you have any thoughts on that?
It's the craziest thing. It's the wildest thing when you look at it, that no matter what which president has been in office, or if Republicans have controlled the House and Congress, or if it's been Democrats that have been controlling Congress. It's like it's been status quo for years. It's just the default that the government will grow every year, and we're going to give money to the most ridiculous causes every year. And there was just no questioning that in DC. It didn't matter if if DeSantis had won, or if Ted Cruz had become president, or whatever Republican running for office had it wouldn't matter. They wouldn't change it. But the fact that Trump is this outsider guy who's come in, and he's brought in Elon Musk, who's another outsider guy, and they're just looking at stuff, and they're just saying normal common sense stuff like maybe we shouldn't be funding a Iraqi version of Sesame Street. Like maybe that's not something we should be paying $20 million for. Like it's just a very common thing that you would ask people on the street. Like 9 out of 10 of them would be like, "That's crazy. Why are we doing that?" But it's just the default there, and you see everybody in Washington just freaking out over this because it's been the status quo, and you finally have someone that's dismantling that. Like someone's talking about the national debt. That's a very cool thing to actually see.
Yeah, no kidding. I look at all these things that are being exposed, and I mean, I think if there's a lot of suspicion anyways that, hey, this is going on and that's going on. $3 million paid to a rapper in Gaza to create anti-Semitic music. I mean, looking at this, taxpayer dollars. You look at this stuff.
The problem from the Babylon Bee's perspective is it was so funny. It was so hard to write jokes about it because I'm like, I was like looking at this list of things that USA had funded. It's like $74,000 for a trans musical in Ireland. There's
no kidding. Yeah.
Trans comic book in Peru, $30,000. You look at these, I'm like, how do you write something funnier than that? Like, there's nothing fun.
And it's real. So that goes to not the Bee.
So I'll pass that over to our friends at Not the Bee and let them handle that one.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, look at the stuff; it's just nuts. Well, when looking at anti-Semitism, you have any thoughts on the growing anti-Semitism?
It's a crazy thing that you see that out in the world, and that it's 2025 and you still see that kind of stuff, and maybe increasing in some circles. I do think it's a little bit amplified because you have free speech on the internet, especially like on X and stuff. You have these small pockets of crazies who find each other, which has always been a problem with the internet. Before, if you were like a Nazi, like I'm a Nazi, I believe all this Nazi stuff. It's like if you lived in your town, there would be no other Nazis in your town, and everybody would say, "You're an idiot, shut up," and you would shut up. But now you can go find that small group of 1,000 people online, and you can reinforce each other's beliefs and start to grow a little bit. So it's a little tricky, but the answer isn't to suppress them. The answer is to expose the things that they're saying and counter them with good arguments and expose that to people. But yeah, you see a little bit of that on the far right, and the good thing about the right is the right's been very good about cutting the line there and saying, no, that's too far. Like that's too far for us. You're not one of us. And you don't see that on the left. Like you don't see the left talking to Marxists and communists. People all day long can have a little hammer and sickle on their bio and they're fine, and you won't get fired from your job for having that. But on the right, we're like, no, like we're not Nazis, and we'll separate ourselves from you. Yeah.
And there are some on the right, but like you said, that's what
they're fringe, and we separate ourselves.
So I have a friend of mine from Israel. He's become somebody I've had on podcasts and was just on a program with him recently. He's a young guy, 29 years old. He's Netanyahu's social media director, Hananya Naftali. And he flew into LA just last week. And then when I saw him, it was last Tuesday night in Huntington Beach, he said he was just, because everything he sees on the news, he was expecting to get off the plane, wearing a kippah, and have all these anti-Semitic hurls, people cursing at him and everything. He said he found out it was just the opposite, because he said where he sees things in LA, he doesn't see what you're saying.
Yeah, right.
He just sees all these people on the media that are just going to want to take him down as soon as he arrives. He goes, man, there was a pro-Israel rally the day after I landed. There was all these other things. He goes, I can't believe how well welcomed I was.
Yeah, it's important to remember that the internet is not real life, and people forget that. Like, you look at something on the internet or you look at something on the news and you realize like they have an agenda. They have an agenda that they're trying to push, and they're trying to make something seem like this huge thing, and it's not. Like, you saw how many people were so shocked that Kamala Harris lost the election, and in hindsight, you're like, well, yeah, she was a terrible candidate. Like, I don't care what your politics are. She was an awful candidate, And so just to look at that, there's posts like on Reddit and stuff where people are, there's this far left echo chamber, and they're like, how did Kamala Harris lose? I can't believe it. And there was one where a guy actually came real close to, like, he was like, maybe we're in an echo chamber. Like, maybe the world doesn't agree with it. You know, you're like, yeah, maybe, you know, because you surround yourself with people online, or you only watch media sources you agree with, and you start to think, oh yeah, we're definitely going to win this thing. And then you look at it and it's not real.
The CNN echo chamber, and and a lot of people haven't realized yet that CNN is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Right. But yeah, it's an echo chamber. I remember talking about that a few years back, that both sides are in an echo chamber, but it looked like the echo chamber that was really coming out of Silicon Valley, which was so pro left, was bigger and bigger and bigger. But the reality of it is, it happened exactly like you said. It found out, it almost, like, in a sense, backfired on them.
Yeah,
and I think it's Babylon Bee, it's Joe Rogan, it's these different social media platforms that are out there that are really helping people to wake up and realize, look, the mainstream media has lost touch with reality. I look at Doge, and I was trying to figure out, how is it that these media outlets, the real big ones, the ones you see in airports everywhere, how is it that they have less viewers than channels like this one? Yeah. How is it that they have that, and yet they're able to pay their anchors millions of dollars? We have a hard time getting a hot cup of coffee. I'm looking, going, how is it they can afford to do this? Then you look at Doge and you go, well, where's all the money come from in order to fund these things?
Yeah. Yeah, well, you look at it, USAID. I mean, they were like literally,
well, that's it.
Funding Reuters and the AP and all this stuff. Like, oh, I guess I'm paying for it.
You're paying for it. And now apparently you have to report on the five things you did last week.
Right.
And boy, does that have people up in arms. Yes. So was there a moment when you realized satire was your calling? I mean, you went back to your college days, you started there, humor's developed there, but.
Yeah, so the guy who actually founded the Babylon Bee, Adam Ford, I followed him on Facebook, and he had been doing a Christian webcomic for years, and I followed him, and he posted, I'm doing like the Christian version of The Onion kind of thing, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. So I just emailed him on day one, sent him a headline, he published it, and then he's like, hey, do you want to be the head writer of the site? I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And so I told my wife, like, a couple days later, I was like, I think I'm going to quit my job and become a comedy writer. She's just like, okay, like, she was very supportive, but I, if you can make money with it, then let's do it, and it ended up working out. So
yeah, it is impressive. Yeah. Like I said, I really enjoy humor, but I really, I admire, and I really am inspired by people like you, and I look at certain comedians that are so good at saying what I was trying to say, but I couldn't quite put all the words together or the picture together. Gary Larson, Far Side, was one of my favorites. I used to I'd get that calendar on January 1st every year. I mean, this goes back to the 90s. I'd go through the entire 365 days in one sitting, just laughing at all the different, the picture says 1,000 words, a couple of words there, and they're like gold.
Yeah, well, there's something about a joke that feels so obvious. Like, oh, why didn't I think of it? Why didn't I think of that thing?
I have a lot of those. Why didn't I think of it? So I have to rip them off.
Yeah. The best jokes feel effortless, but they take a lot of effort.
Oh, no kidding. I would imagine it's an awful lot of effort. So you mentioned earlier about just some of the challenges and the difficulties, and I've read a lot of different interviews that you have been on. I think comedy often comes out of the stresses and the trials of life. If you go back to Nazi Germany and you look at the Jews who are comedians, and a lot of them have been influenced over anti-Semitism, going back to Nazi Germany, a lot of the black comedians, I would imagine, inspired by some of the difficulties. How do you deal with life? And I'm thinking, in my mind, the very way that I deal with a lot of the stuff I have to deal with every day is comedy. I think of my own stupid things. I think they're funny, even if nobody else does. Yeah. But my wife definitely doesn't think I'm funny. But I've got to deal with things on a humor level. But do you find that it is through the trials and stresses and difficulties that tends to birth comedy, like Jews coming out of the anti-Semitism and different culture things?
Yeah. I mean, comedy thrives under those kinds of situations, and it not only does it provide that comfort for people, but it's comedy takes down tyrants, to some degree. Like Like that's what it's for. It's it's the boy who points out that the emperor has no clothes, and all of a sudden everybody realizes, oh, he's naked. He's been naked this whole time. That's like, hey, Joe Biden's old.
I felt like with Mr. Ice Cream Man, I love calling him. I was like, how can he's got no clothes? Nobody can see it. Well, some people could see it.
Yeah, and it's important. It's so important to maintain that sense of humor in the midst of dark times, and it's reciprocal, like you said. It gets us through those times. It's important to feed that humor bug, and then it does. Your humor gene starts to grow in the middle of that, and you realize now I'm seeing life through this whole new lens of humor, being able to laugh at things, which is great.
And you probably see it everywhere you go. You go to the grocery store. Now you're seeing everything. You probably get a lot of inspiration going.
Oh yeah, my wife's got it. My wife hits me because I'm writing jokes down in church. Stop. Pay attention.
Oh, that's great. So does Babylon Bee get much pushback from certain Christians, like I would say Karens that are in the Christian world?
I mean, like no matter what you're writing a joke about, somebody's mad.
Oh yeah.
You write a joke about Trump, people are mad. You write a joke about Biden, people are mad. But in the church, you have the two different types of criticism. Like you have the little old church ladies that are upset that you're like, oh, you're making fun of the Bible, you're making fun of church, which I sympathize with. Like you don't want to go too far. You don't want to be irreverent, But what we're trying to do is make fun of things that is a misperception of Christianity, or we make fun of the way that we fail to live up to the scriptures. We fail to live up to Christ's commands. Like that's what you're making fun of. We're not making fun of Christ's commands themselves. We're making fun of the fact that we don't live up to them, and we're trying to point those things out. So I sympathize with that side. But then you also have like the progressive Christians that are like just upset that we're making fun of progressive things, And very early on, we published an article that was like, it was like a woman that says satire is fine, except when it targets my own beliefs,
Yeah.
And it's become evergreen. We just repost it every time everybody gets upset about something, because no matter what it is, somebody's mad, Because all these people were all into The Onion and they loved it, and like, oh yeah, they're making fun of Republicans. And then we have something that comes along, they're like, oh cool, it's making fun of church stuff. We like this too. And then we started making fun of the left and progressive theology, and it's like, oh, this is not right. This is inappropriate.
I can't believe you guys are going to hell for speaking such things.
Exactly.
Is there I would say a post that you've done or an article that stands out as something that was really, I don't know, I don't think better is the right word, but just stands out to you looking back?
Yeah, a lot of, I love the inside baseball church jokes. Like that's always been my thing that I like to do. We've done stuff like man sitting literally 3 feet away from the Bible asks if God would speak to him, and we have this great picture of this guy sitting there, and he's like, oh, if only the Lord would speak to me, and the Bible's right there. The first article I ever wrote that I sent in was the Holy Spirit unable to move through congregation as fog machine breaks, So that kind of stuff where it's like, it's funny and you laugh, but then it's like, oh yeah, it's kind of true, So that's always the stuff.
Yeah, it is kind of true.
Yeah.
That's so. You've mentioned that satire can be a powerful way to reflect on the world around us. So when you look at that, and you also encourage people to get involved in politics. So do you think it helps them to get involved because it lightens them up and they realize, okay, and I've got somebody who thinks like me? Because one of the things that you're able to do is, like you said, with comedy, it's the person who can put it together, and they're thinking it, but you're able to put it together. Do you think you're able to inspire people in that way?
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a lightning rod. Like, it's something that everybody's already thinking, but we put it into a succinct, funny headline, and then everybody's able to like share that article and put that out there, and you get that messaging out there. There's certain people that, because I think God calls people to different levels of involvement in politics. Mm-hmm. Some people probably can't handle the stress and just want to be involved in their local church, and I think that's fine. If that's not what God's called you to some degree. But yeah, some people they're not willing to get out there and debate all these important political things, or they don't want to go out and knock on doors and rally up support for a Republican candidate or conservative candidate or whatever. But they're willing to share a Babylon Bee article because it's inoffensive, it's funny, they can share it and kind of put their beliefs out there without offending too many of their friends. And I think that's a really cool thing that it can inspire people to in that way.
It is all different levels. I mean, you can even think of it within a church. Most people aren't called to be the pastor,
Right.
and some are called to lead a home Bible study.
Yeah.
And you have and then some people are great. You need ushers, you need all the different dynamics. You need children's ministry servers and so forth. I'm really good at sharing things to all my friends, or just talking about them on camera because, but not everybody's definitely called to those things. But the sharing of this information will inspire people. I don't feel called to be a politician,
Right.
but I do think that I need to be involved as a parent, even though my kids are older now, and I still need to be involved, still need to be doing things, and I can still exhort people and encourage people. Hey, get involved. Right here in California, Chad Bianco, who's sheriff of Riverside County, decides he's going to be running for governor of California, which, by the way, for all of you who are from California, I know how much you love Newsom. He's just fabulous. So what are your?
Well, I'm gonna vote. I always vote for Newsom because the material.
The material.
I need the comedy material.
So I got to admit. So I had a lot of people that said, because my You Can't Make This Up program, they said, what's going to happen now that Trump has won? You aren't going to have anything to talk about. Oh, there's still plenty to talk about. But between Biden and Harris and Tampon Tim, there was always something to talk about. So when I'm going to ask you just about all kinds of stuff now. The bullet train in California.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts on that?
Well, this is great. It's just it's the most. It's like a satirical joke or novel or something that you would write about this train to nowhere that just constantly keeps going on and on for billions of dollars. It's funny. It's one of those things that's impossible to write satire about because it's just so funny on its face.
It is. Charles Payne, Fox News just said, it was just recently, he does a segment on the bullet train. It was like, I don't know, something like 150 yards long, and it costs, I think it was $11 billion to build just that part. And it's supposed to go from Los Angeles to Sacramento or something like that. And then we have Newsom with the fires. So we have fires, we have the DEI stuff. We have the hurricane in North Carolina, it just devastated everything. You have fires in Maui. You have all these different things. We have planes piloted by DEI people. Do you have any thoughts on any of the fires? Or I'm not asking you to dive into a conspiracy theory or anything like that. If you want to, you can. But I'm curious because we have empty fire hydrants, which I think personally was due to these ridiculous policies that come from the left to blow up dams and not keep water in reservoirs.
Well, it's a perfect example of leftism, how it is so beautiful and utopian and wonderful in theory. Like in their heads, it's so like, we've saved the fish, we're pro-environment, we're green energy. And then the rubber meets the road and it's like, okay, everybody's homes are burning down and everybody's dying, and it's like, well, yeah, but we saved the fish, there's this disconnect.
Yeah, a fish that's not even indigenous to California, of all things.
One of my favorites, Karen Bass, the
mayor of Los Angeles.
She bragged on social media that now, if you would like to rebuild your home in the Pacific Palisades, you can come meet with the 12 different agencies that you need to go through for permitting. And she was bragging that we have them all together in one place today. If you want to come talk to the 12 different agencies. Oh my gosh. It's so smooth now. You can get your permits approved and through 12 different agencies here.
Just absolutely nuts. I mean, so in Romans chapter 1, Paul's writing, and he says in there 3 different times, he goes, God will give them over. He says, I'll give them over to a reprobate mind. Or debased mind. That word reprobate or debased, it means, and this fits what you're describing. It means not just a mind that's gone just down this perverted path, but it conveys the idea that a mind that will make a decision that will actually turn and harm itself.
Yeah.
It'll be bad. It'll be bad for the other people, but not thinking through the whole process, it's going to hurt themselves. And that's what we see happening with these insane policies.
Yeah, just like it will backfire every time because it's not based on truth. It's not based on reality. It's based on something that only works in fantasy. This utopian Marxist communist ideal, whatever it is, and you can get away with it for a while. There's a little bit what Romans 1 alludes to too. Like you can get away with it for a while, but the wrath of God is coming. It is being revealed. Is something that's a principle in the Bible. That things will eventually unravel. It will eventually shoot you in the foot. Yeah, the wicked man might be successful for a time. And that's like it shows too, like God's grace and blessing on America and California. We have a Babylon B article that's like God shocked that Democrats were able to ruin California. Like he's given us so much.
Mhm.
Like you look at the resources, and he's like, how did you even screw that up? Like look what I gave you.
No kidding.
And and this is what we're seeing with the USAID stuff too. Is like America's been incredibly prosperous, so much so that we had all this excess spending that we weren't even, because we're all just living our lives, working our jobs. We're not thinking about it. We're not government's spending a little extra money, and then it starts to get exposed, and you're like, how in the world have they kept this Ponzi scheme going for so long?
Yeah, no kidding.
But it's because we had so many blessings that we didn't really think about it. We're not really, we're kind of numb to it to some degree.
No kidding. And then we have coming out of California. I don't want to make this all about California, so sorry everybody who's watching throughout the rest of the world, but it's just some of the insanity we got to deal with all the time out here. So now there's this movement in California to secede from the nation. To me, that just is one of the dumbest things that the left could do, because then they have no military. I think it's 37% of the state of California is now funded by the feds because the politicians out here have managed to screw everything up so bad. So you look at it, and here it is, as you said, here's this environment that is incredible. The geography is beautiful. You have the beaches. You have this incredible weather, all these different dynamics, but they managed to screw it up so bad. But you look at this thinking, I mean, I've thought through this. What would happen if California seceded from the nation?
Well, I mean, it would be tough because I think, as with everywhere else, like everybody's got this picture of California that it's this crazy place where all the crazies go, which is true to some extent. But just like with every other state I go to, it's the cities versus the country, the suburbs and the more rural areas. It's the same thing. Like if you had California secede, what you probably end up with is LA and San Francisco being the ones that, and maybe the coastline, they're trying to get out, and everybody else saying, no, I want to stay. I want to stay in the U.S., which would be good for the U.S. if you get LA and
San Francisco. They can be their own. They can be their own
Yeah,
countries.
exactly. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, and I bet what they would do is build a wall around their city so nobody could escape. Is what they would do.
Yeah.
How do you decide which topics that you're going to tackle?
Every morning, we get up, kind of check the news and see what people are talking about, see what's going to be most effective, and we try to keep it balanced with Christian jokes, everyday life jokes, husband-wife jokes, all that stuff. I think it's all important for keeping a good sense of humor. But yeah, we look at what people are talking about to figure out what kind of joke is going to hit and make the most impact.
You doom scroll.
I doom scroll. I do it for you guys.
It's not just me.
I jump on the grenade for everybody else. Is what I do.
It's
So
not
you're
just
welcome.
me.
Yeah.
So what's next for Babylon B?
We're working on a ton of stuff this year. We're filming a lot of video sketches. If you've ever seen our Woke Jesus sketch, where we have Jesus, our character Woke Jesus, and he's walking through and he's saying all these Democrat talking points, the kind of the progressive misconception of Jesus. Great sketch that we shot, and now we're doing a full season of Woke Jesus, where he's going around doing all the different, instead of healing somebody, he tells them like, you should get on the Affordable Care Act, and I voted for Democrat policies and healed you, that kind of wonderful stuff. So we just shot yesterday. We just shot over at Jack Hibbs Church. We shot Woke Jesus flipping all the tables in the temple, but he wasn't mad at money changing. He was mad because they had the 10 Commandments display, and he was mad at all these things. So that was a blast and a lot of fun. So we're working on multiple of these sketch web series that we're going to start putting out this year. We may do another film with my Garth Strudelfud character from the January 6th movie, and we're working on another best of book. So we have our Babylon B best of book that's got all our beautiful colored print articles, and we're working on another one of those.
Yeah. That sounds great. So as we look at things that are developing, what would you say to all of our viewers that are out there? Some are going to be believers and some are not.
I think it's a moral mandate for people. Whether or not you're a believer, and I think you should be a believer because I think that's where hope comes from. But I think we have a duty to be hopeful, and I think we have a duty to retain a sense of humor, retain a sense of joy. I think people have used this phrase before, but I like to say that we're called to be joyful warriors in the middle of the fight, and not be despairing warriors. It's easy to go out there and say, I'm going to fight the culture war, but if you do it and you're dour and doomy and gloomy all the time, like, our movement's not attractive at that point. I think we need to retain joy, or what else are we fighting for?
Yeah, you don't want to walk around as a believer looking like you've been baptized in lemon juice, so to speak.
Yeah.
How's your thought on satire? Has it evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean, like, you look at satire, like, all the way through back. I don't know if this is as far back as you're going, but you look all the way back into the scriptures, and you have the prophet Elijah challenging the prophets of Baal, and he's maybe your God's in the bathroom, or maybe he's walking around, or maybe he's asleep. Like, so you have satire all the way back in Bible times, in ancient Israel, where satire is being used to skewer false cultural beliefs. And it's being used to say, like, hey, look how ridiculous this thing is. Because that's one thing that satire does, is that we try to do, is, like, if you mock wokeness, well, guess what? If wokeness looks ridiculous, the kids aren't going to want to be woke because it looks ridiculous and you get made fun of. Nobody wants to be made fun of.
Yeah.
So the more you can kind of ostracize that, not making fun of the people, because there's a lot of people that are hurting and broken and fall for that stuff, but making fun of the philosophy. That's something that it's called for. But yeah, you see it through all the ages. Satire has always been a tool that people have used to mock things. C.S. Lewis used satire. Martin Luther used satire. G.K. Chesterton used satire. Like, it's actually been a Christian tradition for thousands of years. And so I'm not saying we're C.S. Lewis, but hopefully we're doing our little part.
So when you went to master's college, do you still read a lot, study a lot, theology?
Yeah. Scripture, theology, all of that stuff. I probably am not as deep divey as I was back then, because you're in college and you're in the dorms and you're all the little, Calvinism, and I'm a 10-point Calvinist. I'm only a 9-point Calvinist. So I don't go that deep anymore. But I think it's important. I mean, a psalm a day is kind of my motto. Like, you got to read through the Psalms every morning, and just a way to maintain that joy, because you really feel the joy of the Lord through that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I look and I think of the words to Joshua, where God says, "Don't turn to the left or the right.
Yeah.
Don't let these words depart from your mouth and your heart, your mind." And I encourage people all the time, look, you got to be in God's word every day. Yeah. We don't live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God.
Well, it's been a challenge for me. Like, I even uninstalled Twitter from my phone. I uninstalled X from my phone, because I found out every morning you wake up immediately. I'm like, well, I don't want to start my day there. Like, I'll go on the computer once I get there or whatever. But it's like, you want to start in the scriptures and then get to the, and then you're ready to tackle the doom scrolling.
Oh, actually that's great, because I wake up early every morning. It's just I do, and the temptation with me is to immediately do the doom scrolling, because I've got to be on it and I got to be ready and I know what I've got to do through the day. But I also know at the same time, I have to be in his word first. Yeah. When we have the God of the universe who's created us, who's given us this opportunity to meet with him in the morning, first thing to do is pick up our phone and go, oh, hey, look at these pictures. Hey, look at Babylon Beach. Check this out today.
Well, I'm okay if you read Babylon Beach. It counts for devotions, like I said. So.
But it is that it's almost like there's, as a believer in Christ, we should want to get up. And I understand there's struggles. Listen, I struggle with it. It's not like I don't. But it's fighting against the temptation and to put God first. Say, God, you saved me. You saved me by your grace. When I grew up in Orange County, when I was younger, going to Catholic school, then I had this is way back in the 80s when I got saved, I became a drug dealer, dealing with the Mexican mafia of all people. And then ended up being removed from that because everybody got arrested but me. And then I ended up with a cocaine habit. And then I got saved. As in 1988, I was living in Newport Beach. God saved me at that moment. I remember what I got saved from and where I was. And for me, I think it was so profound when I got saved that it that it was so definitive. Even though I was raised in a good home, it wasn't a home of born again Christians. It was Catholic, right? So I didn't understand the spiritual dynamics of that. When you look back at your life, you were obviously raised in a Christian home. You talked a little bit about that. You go to Christian school. You thankful for that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely thankful for that. I think it's a real blessing, to be able to, just through God's common grace, like growing up in a Christian home, even if you don't end up believing, there's God's common grace that says, like, you're protected from certain things and bad decisions that you would have otherwise made, that you have good, loving parents who stop you from making those kinds of decisions, which is great. But I think there's another, angle when it comes to salvation. Like, I look at my story, it's like, in some ways I had to be saved from, my own church culture upbringing of like, I'm a good person because I got all the Awana awards, or whatever. Like I would never say that, but there.
But did you?
I did get all the Awana awards. Yeah, I brought my Timothy award if you guys want. No, but like there's a pride that comes with that, and in some ways that's harder, like because you don't have that instant radical, like,
right.
I'm not saying I had it harder than you, but
no, I get it. I totally get it.
It's the difference between that like 180 turn to like. Just having that switch flip in your mind, like when God intersects your life and He changes you, to be like, oh, it's not my effort. It's Paul in Philippians 3. Of like being able to count all that stuff as rubbish in order to follow Christ and count Him as the thing that's worthy.
Right.
Yeah.
But you still wouldn't count the Christian upbringing as rubbish. It's the the religious aspect,
the achievements of like that,
the one awards. It was for the purpose.
Apart from Christ. Yeah. And I think and that's partially what Paul is saying too. Is like apart from Christ, all the moral stuff is worthless. It's worthless if it's not built on Christ.
Amen.
So that's kind of the my salvation story.
I try to preach that to my son. I don't think he likes hearing my preaching, but it's like he's raised in a Christian home, Christian church, and it's helping somebody understand. Look, you have to. Right now, he's back there filming. He's probably going, "Oh man, I wish my dad would shut up." But all the guys working back there, Peter, Noah, Matthew is being raised in that home. It's not a club. You have to know Christ yourself. You have to come through that place. And for me, it was totally dramatic. I mean, it was completely different. It was so obvious. I mean, I was raised in Catholic as an altar boy, and I was 9 or 10 years old when I was an altar boy in Orange County. And you've got the priest tells you to get the wine out and get it ready for the service. Here I am pouring wine at 10 years old in the back room, and going, hey, it's such a different world. That was religious, but it wasn't Christ.
Right.
And it can still be religious. And I try to caution people about that, even in regardless of the Protestant church you're in. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Kyle, for joining me today. And it's been great. And how can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. Just search Kyle Mann. I'm on there, and follow Babylon Bee and all that stuff. And subscribe to our newsletter. We send out the stories every morning.
Yeah. And make sure you do it. And remember, don't go there until you do your devotions first thing in the morning. And then you can go there and all these different things. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. God bless you. Been a great time.